Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams, and today I'm the founder and principal of OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment. In this episode of the Power of Design podcast, I'm talking to my friend Alaa Bou Ghanem. Alaa is an architect, founder and CEO of A.B Group, an architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a fun time talking to Alaa. He is full of energy and has a great immigrant story very similar to mine. We talk about business, design, and architecture. Please take a listen. Alaa, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Jack?
Excellent.
How you doing?
So remind me, how did we meet?
That is a very good question. I think, I believe, did I reach out to you? I think I reached out to you on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Texted you just something. I remember. I think you had the Power of Design podcast. I texted you a clip of the Social Network, the movie, and I texted you. Facebook was the Facebook.
Yes.
And then to Justin Timberlake at the time in the movie passes by, he's like, drop the and just keep Facebook. And so I texted you that clip, and you texted me back, and then we scheduled beers here right next to your office. So I think that was the first contact. I was just curious about what you were doing, and I just wanted to make contact in an interesting way.
Yeah, man, that's exciting because we're doing the podcast right now, and we met because of the podcast.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that has been very rewarding and exciting for me, that the podcast had opened a lot of new relationships with me and other people that I feel aligned with, and it's interesting because I feel that people who listen to the podcast and they like it, they're the type of people I want to be associated with, that I feel we give each other a lot of energy. So that's exciting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when we met that day, you were working for an architecture firm, right?
Yeah. I was with the biggest architecture firm here in town. I was in their community studio, and I think I had recently graduated. It was like probably 2 or 3 months after me graduating, and I was with them full time at the time. Yeah.
So we haven't, I think we haven't talked much since that day. So tell me what happened after that, after we met.
To be honest with you, it's been a tornado. It's been crazy. So I graduated in May of 2020, and I left my previous job or my previous company in June of 2021. So I think sometime that summer, or towards the end of that summer of 2020 is when we met. And I had kind of around that time, my family in Lebanon, most of them are back in Lebanon. And so the economy had crashed over there. They were hit by an explosion in the port and COVID, and the government is corrupt. So a bunch of factors came together, and the currency collapsed tenfold. So
wow.
If you had $100,000 in the bank, that went down to 10,000. And so they needed some financial help in that sense. And so I had my full-time job. I was making money through the full-time position, but I needed to supplement some more to help out. So I went and started getting some residential work on this side. And so probably 2 months into me telling the world that, hey, if you have a residential project that you need help with, I can do it for close to nothing. The world, 2-3 months, the word spread, and I had about kind of 6 to 8 projects going, small additions here and there, probably 200 square feet, nothing really fancy. And so I kept doing that until I got to a point where I couldn't necessarily handle the full-time job and the side work at the same time. So I had to make a decision. So in terms of helping family, the side work was functional, it was good with a stable income. If you take the stable income out of the equation, now I'm back to just the side work, and now I can barely support myself.
Right.
More or less support my family. So it was a tough decision to make, but I got to a point where like I kind of looked at the long term of it too, and so at that point I made a decision. I kind of gave my 2-week notice, and I mean, it was the reason it was a little bit difficult too is I loved everybody I worked with at that office. Like they became my family. So they had taken me in when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
Right, second year of architecture school. So I kind of grew up with them, 5 years with them. Went to events, saw some of them get married, saw some of them have kids. It's like it goes deep. So it was difficult in that sense too. But I had to kind of let the logic run its way versus the heart. So I gave my 2 weeks notice and went out. And when I went out, I didn't necessarily have a plan, right? All of this came from pressure. It didn't necessarily come from planning.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went out there and started, everybody I'm meeting, I started spreading the word in any way I could. I even took some flyers, like simplest way possible, and started putting them up on open empty storefronts on some of these major boulevards and streets. And soon with that, and so one thing that I kind of did from the beginning is started a kind of a social media account and did all of that and played it hard on social media as well. So started, and I think a little bit of it too is me not saying no to some to any project.
Right.
So some architects come out with the ideas like, I want to work on projects that I like.
Sure.
And so they say no to everything else. My mentality was fill up your 40, 50, 60 hours a week with whatever work you can get. And then if a good project comes along, drop one of the ones that you don't want to take the ones that you want. So I followed that strategy from the beginning too. So I didn't say no to anything. And I started building up like a ledger of projects and it took probably really 4 months on my own. And so when I left my previous company in June of 2021, like I said, I had probably 6 to 8 projects, small residential. In those 2 months after, I kind of built up another 6 or 8. So I had enough to sustain myself personally. And as the commercial work started to add up, to increase, I started taking that on and maxing out my full capacity in terms of doing the work. And probably the first person that joined me in February 1st this year, 2022. So between June and February, there's how many months? That's 7 months. So probably those 4 months were a struggle in the beginning, and then I had enough projects. I had more than enough projects. I couldn't go to sleep.
Right.
I mean, the market helped too.
Sure.
And so I started taking on commercial work and stacking the commercial stuff too, up until I didn't have enough time to sleep. And so I added one more person in February.
Nice.
And so last month I added a second person. And so in the span of, 9 months or so, we got to where we are today with me just kind of running the show. And
that's exciting.
So
I want to pick up where we are right now, but I would like to learn what it was like to grow up in Lebanon. Tell me about your family and how.
Looking back, it was probably my biggest asset, the differentiator that I had versus everybody else. I think growing up in a country where like it's unstable, you get electricity probably 2 hours a day, and most of the time they give it to you at night because in the day there's the sun. So and I'm going to split that answer into 2 sides. One side is the hardship, the like living without your needs met. And the second side of it is the kind of the emotional support and the family
Yeah.
presence around it. So the combination of those two things together is explosive. When you grow up with not all your needs not met, you kind of learn to learn to be decisive. You learn to differentiate between what could be important, what's not important, what's absolutely not worth your time. And the family piece of it too, they come in, they support you, feel like you have a base somewhere. So I was born in 1995. I'm 26 years old now. And so when I was born, I went to a public school my whole kind of high school, middle school, elementary school path. And my mom is a school teacher. My dad used to be a school principal. Now he's retired. And so he at one point in time when I was in 7th and 8th grade, me, my mom, my sister, and my dad would all wake up, go to the same school, and come back home. So we have a very, very tight knit family and a lot of friends and close by. So to make a long story short, I think growing up in Lebanon and moving to the U.S. was probably one of the biggest advantages that I could have had. I see how it is back there. That's the big things, is that some people don't know how it is outside the U.S.
That's right.
You see how it is in the U.S. and
Yeah.
you don't take it for granted.
Sure.
And you just don't waste a second. You just grind and you try to take advantage of you being away from your family.
Yeah.
And not waste time.
Yeah. I can relate to that, big time, because I have a, similar story. And there are two things that I always think about. And is one, when you go somewhere else, you have experienced life in two different, cultures, countries. You have the benefit of contrast, right? You have something to measure against.
Absolutely.
And sometimes when you're in the same place, there is nothing to compare to. So yeah, that's what you have. But when you have a contrast, you can value things more. You understand. I remember one time somebody asked me, as an immigrant, what do I think was my biggest like pet peeve or what from Americans that how they think. And I said, they don't know what they have.
Yeah.
They're multimillionaires in opportunities and they don't know it.
Yeah.
So when we come here from a place that you don't have the same opportunities, you don't have the same, abundance, you don't have the same system that allows you to do things, you're like, oh my God, all these things at my disposal.
Yeah.
Let's do it. You're like, oh, I've done it with a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
Here is a lot easier. But for me, it was interesting because when I came here, I found a job. I started working, and one of the things that I felt personally, I felt very grateful for the opportunity. I was like, wow, these people opened the doors for me. They're giving me a job. They appreciate what I'm doing. So I feel very grateful. So in my mentality was, let's work hard to pay back, to the community that have opened the doors. But I think it took so long for me to really, I was in that mindset for too long that I started kind of losing what we're talking about, because it got to the point where I was like, I worked for 10 years for a company. I'm like, oh, okay, I feel good. This is my city. This is my country. I love this. I'm a US citizen, all these things that at some point I started kind of detaching from that grit and that enthusiasm that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And then I got married, I had kids, and I'm kind of falling to the train.
Yeah.
But I had that little thing in my mind, that grit, that idea, that opportunity. I was like, man, but why is? And I got to the point to work at a really big firm, good benefits, salaries. My family doing well. I'm like, man, I made it. I made it. This is the American dream, but I was not fulfilled. And I felt sometimes ungrateful. I was like, why am I not happy? I'm doing everything I want. I'm doing great projects, people. But, at the end of the day, after a lot of thinking and talking to, people that I love and trust, I realized that's not the purpose of my life.
Yeah.
I have my own identity, my own ideas, my own dreams. I want to live the rest of my life exercising those dreams and testing them, see if they work or they don't. And I don't know what your experience has been, but to me, taking that jump has been one of the best decisions of my life.
Oh, absolutely. No questions asked. I wouldn't have my life any other way. Um, for me, even when I was in the full-time job, I was putting in like 60, 70 hours a week, right? And so some people that have that itch inside of them, they just have to scratch it, you know?
Yes.
It's very hard. So even if we didn't, let's say, have enough work at the company to feed us to work 60, 70 hours a week, I was doing 2 competitions, 3 competitions unpaid a year to just exercise my design muscle.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of be in that mindset if you want to make the jump. It's obviously not for everybody, but for some people that they feel it inside of them, their biggest regret will be is not making a move on it if they don't.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say too about like coming from a different country and being grateful, there's a side to it too, is that I think when you're born in a bubble, like in the US bubble, you're afraid to rock the boat. There's a lot of conversation about risk management, and they take it way too far, in my opinion.
Sure.
Of course, you have to be a good person. You have to deliver good quality work. But like just me speaking over the last 9 months, all the people that I work with are amazing people that I wouldn't mind having as friends, you know? So not everybody is out to get you the way they make it sound. And so I think people get caught in that trap, that mental trap, and they're afraid to rock the boat, versus somebody coming from a different system where the boat is already leaking and the ship is sinking.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I've been there. I'm comfortable in this situation.
Yeah.
So you tend to kind of reach further or do something a little bit different. But I definitely agree with you. Like that sense of gratefulness and seeing how it is outside the bubble gives you a really strong attitude and a way to push forward.
You know what? To your point, where they take it so far, there is one saying or phrase that I don't use, but every time I hear it, I'm like, oh my God. And it's when they said, you have to be careful because of that. You have to be, and everything is be careful. Yeah. Everything is about being careful.
Yeah.
And one thing that I will think is, very common in the architecture profession, it's, people are always scared to be sued.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So everything is not about, all your project or your work or your designs. It's all about how you will not get sued instead of how do I deliver the best design for my clients. It's like, no, don't do that. No, don't put that. Put it here. But it's crazy because now that I'm producing drawings, I'm like, I have that in my mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh my, am I going to be in sued because of this?
And you have to keep it in the back of your mind, but
Sure.
you can't let it drive the conversation.
Right. That's
So
a
you
good
have to
point.
be in control of it.
Yeah.
And the way I've controlled it is, I come from a place, and I admit it to the world, of like not so many years of experience. Like
Sure.
I don't have those 30 years. I haven't been alive for 30 years.
Yeah.
So the way I manage it is by only engaging with people that I wouldn't mind having as friends and inviting to my house.
Sure.
So it's very simple.
Yeah.
And the other side of it too is, I don't want to go too deep into this risk management type of rabbit hole, but people think that having like a tight or bulletproof contract is their way to heaven or their way to do it. At the end of at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of words. And what I discovered is that a lawyer can poke holes into your contract and invalidate it. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Find the people and don't worry about the contract so much.
Yeah, and that's where that's another cliche phrase, but this one is very true. That is all about relationships.
Yeah.
You have a great relationship with somebody. Problems are gonna show up.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. People are gonna make mistakes. Sure, we're all gonna make mistakes. But if you have good relationship, you work it out. You help each other. If there is money involved, well, everybody's gonna try to chip in a little bit. So you help each other. But I think that's what the relationships are key.
Yeah, and you're in it with them in the mindset of we're all in it together, versus I'm doing this service for you as a transaction, and then you're gonna move on. I kind of like tend to give my clients, and that's just me, access to me 24/7,
Sure.
so that they feel like we're buddies here. We're doing things for each other instead of to each other.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Like,
Sure.
I'm doing it for you because I like the way you are. I see your future. I see your growth, and I want to be a part of your story as you grow. Versus I'm doing it to you because you paid me.
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference in context that it's
sure.
important.
So one of the things I've learned, in these last 5 years since I started my company, my favorite thing is that every day is so different. Challenges. So many issues. There's so many things to do that I feel that I'm being forced to become a better version of myself every day. I need to become a better person. I need to become a better businessman. And I need to become a better designer, a better father and husband. I feel like push in every single area of my life, which is something I never felt when I was an employee.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel very stretched because I cannot be the same person I was last year, because the problems I have today require a very different mindset and a different level of understanding of the world in order to face those challenges. And I think one of the biggest things through that process that I really think is probably the foundation of what you're doing and all the value you're bringing to the community with your work is to be authentic, which is something that is not very common.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard. It's hard to do because we want to fit in, we want to be accepted, we want to be loved. But when you're not hiding the fact that you don't have 30 years of experience, right? But you don't need that to deliver quality.
Exactly.
Right?
And I was actually thinking about this the other day. I'm like, do you really need 30 years of experience of doing apartment buildings to deliver an apartment building? You need 2 years. You need to do 2 projects and you get it down. The rest, if you're doing that for 30 years, the other 28 years is you just wasted your time. You should have been looking at bigger, better stuff and trying to grow. Yeah. So I was thinking, and a lot of it too is self-rationalization too. So you look at yourself in your position and you want to kind of rationalize why you're doing what you're doing, and so you come up with these stories for yourself. What I just said. So but it's an interesting idea. Like experience. Yeah, I mean, we have 100, whatever. By the time we die, maybe the average age of passing away would be 100. But let's say we have 80 years to live. How do you want to spend those 80 years and play it backwards from there? If you want to spend 30 years getting experience in one area before you make a move, that could be one way to do it, but it's not how I want to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
What would you say are like the 3 most important, skills or talents or, strengths you have as a person that gives you the ability to make this happen?
I think the most important thing is projecting trustworthiness, and that's not from a technical standpoint.
Sure.
That's from as a person, as a personality,
that's confidence.
as a human being.
Yeah.
And so when you approach somebody with that mindset and they feel warm towards you, they feel like they can tell you their deepest secret, all the technical experience and even the fees and all that, those conversations become secondary. They're like, I want to work with you. Let's figure the rest out. That's the frame of mind. So I think at the top of the list is that one, and it's a very intangible skill. Like it's a mix of.
Where does that skill come from?
Genuinely being interested in people. Like if I'm not saying interested in them in the sense that if you emotionally go to where they are, you're emotionally centered and stable, but you're interested in them in a way that kind of makes them feel that you're in the background. You've got their back. You have the ability to work with them to get them out of a hole if they ever fall into one. Not that they will, and a lot of them don't, but just it's that concept in the military. It's like they ask the military folks, why would you go out in the field and die for someone that you just met probably 2 weeks ago on this unit? And the answer is because they do it for me. They would do it for me. You don't necessarily need to know somebody for 50 years in order to get to that level. You just have to communicate implicitly to each other that you would go to lengths to help that person out, and they would do the same for you if you need it.
Yeah.
So in that, it's a very, very deep thing, and
Yeah,
English is my
this,
second language.
yeah, I know. Mine too. So one of the things that I always say is that people don't buy products or services.
Mm-hmm.
People buy experiences.
Yeah.
They buy how they feel about themselves when they're interacting with those products or services.
100%.
And that's why I'm so passionate about branding, because it's all about telling that story.
Mm-hmm.
So how I read what you're saying is, when people are interacting with you, they feel better about themselves. And they feel better about themselves because when you are a centered, confident person and authentic, you're not looking for validation. You're not desperate for something. You know who you are, and you feel comfortable and centered with you are. So when you are with a person that is like that, immediately it's like that mirror effect.
Yeah.
It's like they're like, oh wow, I'm received. That's what they received.
Yeah.
And that is the way I visualize it is, imagine everybody's thirsty.
Yeah.
Everybody's thirsty. And they're thirsty for authenticity. But when they interact with a person that is authentic, it's like they're drinking a glass of water, right?
I think the words you just used are probably closer to what I was thinking than I would be able to describe. I agree with you 100%. I mean, if you look at it too at a core kind of human psychological level, ladies in general are better at kind of more attuned social animals, if you would, than men. And you see it like when a girl says a guy creeps her out, or she doesn't get a good vibe from that person. That person doesn't have to say anything. It's just their energy.
Sure.
And so how do you dissect that and you turn it into a formula that's understandable? I haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
But it's there. Like the aura of it is there, and it's very powerful if you're on the right side of it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one. What's the next one?
Probably my second strength is my age.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always a matter of perspective too. So some people say that they're young, it's a negative, that they don't have the experience. I think it's a positive, because I have so much runway ahead of me.
Oh my gosh.
That I can make not necessarily ideal moves, or I can make certain, I can play around, I can juggle a couple balls, see if that works. If that doesn't work, switch to doing something else. Start a company, start another company.
Sure.
The runway is so long, and I think that's my second advantage. And I draw confidence from that. I don't necessarily draw insecurity. So I think that's definitely the second one.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot, and I tell to my kids, is that there are two things that I see that are similar, and it's time and money.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend time, you can spend money. You can waste time, you can waste money. You can invest time, you can invest money. The only difference is that money you can always make more of.
Yeah.
Time you cannot.
Yeah, it's
finite. So the key is, when you understand that time is more valuable than money,
mm-hmm.
that's what you realize. So right now you're a millionaire in time.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
And time is more valuable than money, because sometimes I tell my kids, would you rather have $1 million? Would you rather have $1 million when you're 90 years old, or would you rather have $100 when you're 9 years old?
Yeah.
So I think you need to go deeper on that, because yes, you are a millionaire. And I don't think you know how millionaire you are yet.
I wouldn't interpret it that way, in the sense that your direction, your tie, or your relationship to money and time is not that direct. If you have a lot of time, doesn't mean you're necessarily you have that much value, because you still have the option to waste it. So you know what I'm saying? It's a dynamic thing that's changing every day. So you cannot necessarily take that blanket linear correlation between the two and just, if the scale is this way, it's this way.
Sure.
In terms of time, and that's also a reason why. How do I say this? The reason why I'm so urgent, or I have a sense of urgency about life, is because I don't want to waste time is because of what I've seen from when I was a kid, right?
Right.
So all the pieces of the puzzle have to fit the right way for you to transfer time into a valuable thing.
Right.
But a lot of people are born with the same amount of time and go into spend it all on things that do not create value or do not generate goodness into the world, I guess, so that they don't cash in on the time they have, for example. If you think of it too, like the Warren Buffetts of the world and the Elon Musks of the world, like those people have figured out a way to take the 60 years that they're actively productive human beings and make the best of it, right? So compared to some, we do have a lot of runway and we can't waste it, but compared to others, we are so insignificant in the fact that in the sense of what we're figuring out compared to what they've already done. So that push and pull in two different directions also is a part of like keeping you centered and keeping you feeling like you want to achieve more and stretch yourself more. So
sure.
I agree with you. I think the like the millionaire thing from a money standpoint, you're just like you're a future millionaire if you act correctly.
But the way I see it is you are already a millionaire because you have it in your hands. The difference is how are you gonna use that resource?
I see.
Right? So you have it. That means you're a millionaire. Now you can be how many people win the lottery and they waste it in 2-3 years. So you have it. Now the difference in the experience of life you have is how are you using the resources?
Yeah.
And I think that's where to me the word wisdom comes to place, because you need to be wise to use it. So people for example, I will think the default thinking of a 26-year-old with a similar path that you have will be, oh man, I have plenty of time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get more experience. I'm gonna work until I'm 36 because I have plenty of time.
Yeah.
But you're saying, oh no. I have the time I have. I need to use it. I need to invest it. I need to start working on it. And what you're doing now is investing.
Yeah, exactly. And you're investing into something that has no value, and you're kind of trying to generate a momentum around it so that the world perceives a value to it, so that you can grow it and basically develop it and live from it. So that's basically it.
Yeah.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
Alaa, welcome back to the Power of Design podcast.
Thank you, man.
So, you're the first guest where we had the power go out during the podcast. So last time we talked was about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. And we were talking about how you're from Colombia, I'm from Lebanon.
Yeah.
Power goes out. So everything happens for a reason.
That's right. So, man, I'm excited to catch up again and continue the podcast. So what I like to talk about today is what's your vision or your perspective about what a good design and what good architecture is in today's environment.
So that's a very broad question, and so I think every answer to that question changes based on the client and based on the contextual bubble that the project lives within. To me, like if you're doing a residential home, a big part of the project being a successful or design good is the owners being happy, it's serving the purpose for their family, and I think a big part of what makes a project successful to me as a firm. So everybody has to have a little bit of selfishness, if you would, in the project.
Yeah.
Is me being able to market it, me being able to take that project and have that project give birth to 3-4 other projects.
Right.
So from a design standpoint, that changes dramatically. And so I think that same concept in terms of good design that you do on a nuclear family level, single family home, you can take that idea and apply it to a board of trustees, a big corporation wanting to do a headquarter. As long as all and it does get a little bit difficult when you start to get into like community design, when you're designing for the community. So that's a little bit of a different challenge, but the core concepts are still the same. What ends up happening on bigger scale projects where they're being used by the general public is that the architect ends up making a lot of assumptions about what's good for the public.
Right.
And we just being honest, you're not right all the time.
Sure.
And so if you're right 50% of the time, you're doing good.
Right.
So I guess what makes a good project, a design project, good, I would say, is all the involved parties being happy with the final product, and the final product being an element of its own that creates some sort of a fan base around it.
Right.
I think that's because it's such a general question. The answer has to be general like that. So once you see a building and it creates an emotion in you,
sure,
you're a fan of it. That building has won. Whoever designed it, that building won in the eyes of the user.
Yeah.
And so you have to approach it that way. You have to have your project be kind of an ecosystem of its own, and it creating a fan base around it of its own. And to me, between the client and that success metric that I just mentioned, it encompasses what I think makes a good design project.
Yeah, I see it in like levels. I think level 1, it needs to function. So whatever the purpose is for the building, it needs to, facilitate that purpose and be functional and easy to use. So that's level 1. I think level 2 is when now you add aesthetic beauty. So now when you perceive it with your eyes, the proportions, colors, or materials, people like it. It's like aesthetic beauty is something that we all are wired to perceive and enjoy, right? You see a beautiful person, you see something beautiful in nature, you're like, oh wow, look at that, it's beautiful. So you can create beauty, aesthetic beauty. That's another level. But I think the key thing is when you talk about emotion, and I think that's what's hard. Not all construction provokes emotion. It's very hard to do that because it's something that you feel it. You cannot explain it, or you don't have to describe it for it to happen. It's just you just feel it. And I think that's the maximum level of architecture.
And I agree with you 100%. I think like even if you look back at the days when there was an emperor that ruled over probably half of the earth, and they had virtually unlimited resources. Like right now, we think about our certain business peoples as rich. They're at a minute scale compared to what used to happen like 1,000 years ago. So when that person had power and had the money and the resources to build, they went for absolute beauty.
Yes.
And so function was okay. It needed to do something, right? But what made that project special was that it was its beauty. And in the world we live in now, I would say that's evolution. It's in every person since those old days, and we try to shoot for that in what we design. How successful we get to that is, like you said, is the emotion that it triggers in somebody. Like when you go to the pyramids, you're like, damn, you don't even know how to describe it. But it's very hard to put your finger on it. It's just whether it clicks in you or not.
Yeah, to me, architecture is the human effort to contain space, right? If you look at humanity, so we're these, human beings around the earth.
Yeah.
The most basic state is this humans and animals are under the sky, so it's open space, unlimited.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not contained, so you can go everywhere, you can see as far as you can. But now, because we have to do certain specific activities or certain behaviors, then we contain the space through architecture to facilitate that. So the most basic notion of architecture or effort to contain space to me is a cavern, right? So you find a space where you can go, and once you go in there's some functionality to it. For example, I'm protected from the rain, I'm protected from danger or other animals. I can sleep here. So now it's like, oh wow, that's architecture. And then you start creating it. Now you don't find it. So maybe let's take these sticks or these gigantic leaves and put one on top of the other one. And oh, wow, look, I can be here. I can sleep. And then we start kind of evolving
building
on how we're molding the infinite space to feed our needs.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think at the core, like you said, level 1 is function. It has to function. But I think a lot of times function and efficiency get kind of intermingled together. To me, beautiful design cannot be 100% efficient. There is a portion of efficiency that you have to sacrifice and give it to the artistic or to the emotional piece of it.
Yes.
And so when you're trying to build a functional space and a beautiful space at the same time, you are sacrificing some efficiency. If you're trying to build an efficient space, you'll get a factory with tilt-up walls and a big box with 500 feet long walls.
Yeah.
So as long as function is delivered with some sort of efficiency, it's not going to be 100% inefficient to do something functional.
Yeah.
But as long as it's some reasonable percentage, and that percentage is dedicated to the artistic side of the design, I'm happy as a designer.
Yeah. So two key things right there. And I think one is when you start looking at the threshold, when do you define if something is architecture or a habitable sculpture, right? When you go into art, where the emotional and creative and aesthetic value is a lot more important, but you can live inside a sculpture. So is that architecture? Is that art? I think that's an interesting conversation. But what I like to talk about is our current context in the one we operate as architects. So we have building codes and zoning regulations and architectural styles, and there are all these constraints that we live in that I think and I'm guilty of this, to be trapped into these constraints and sometimes creating, I would say, maybe architecture without a soul, without emotion, that only appeals to what's the style that everybody's doing, so let's all repeat it. And being very obsessed about the efficiency, mainly because we grew up with building codes and regulations and all these 3,000 checklists that we need to create, that we become these compliance machines, that we forget about the emotional part and even the aesthetic, because we ended up just doing this architecture that is based on the lines of the wood slats and the white and the picture and then it's like everything is based on what's the style. What do you think about that?
I think that if you look at most architects, they've created most architects that do cool projects, they've created their portfolio in countries other than the US, other than I would say the West in general. It could be South America, it could be Africa, it could be China, anywhere, Middle East. But there is a certain limit to how much codes you can apply to a certain area and still get good looking architectures from it. To your point, I think if we have these codes, we have to operate within them. And so what you can do with these codes existing is somewhat limited. But again, if you take your skill and let's say you go apply it in Lebanon or in Colombia, you be I'm trying to put this in a way that doesn't necessarily get perceived negatively, because these codes are doing their job. They're there to keep people safe.
There's a purpose for
so
that.
they're not unpurposeful. But from a looks and design standpoint, you're designing for the extreme minority, if you would. Most people my age, at least that I know, wouldn't care to jump a 4-foot ledge. Like they'll do it. So those are the you know what I'm saying. What I'm saying when I say you're designing for a very small amount of people.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing wrong with that. It just affects the aesthetic of it. And so a good building design in the US means something different than a good building design in Lebanon. It means it's very contextual. So I would say, if you are trying to do something extremely funky and something that the world hasn't seen before, the US is not the environment to do it. So, and that's also me being realistic a little bit, because I apply that concept to everything in life. Like if I was going to build a career, right, that I'm proud of, where I come from, Lebanon, is not the place to do it. So you don't take the rules of soccer and you go shove them down all the basketball players.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. If you want to play basketball, you go play basketball where they're playing basketball.
Yeah, with those rules.
Yeah, if you want to play soccer, you go to where they're playing soccer, and you make it work within the rules of the game. So a lot of that goes into the architecture piece. And so, long story short, you can still do a lot with the US here, and some architecture firms that have been around for 60, 70, 100 years have proven that something can be done, but not as easily. Like you have to have the fight in you, and the minute you slip on or you let a piece of the design go, almost all of it goes away for the sake of safety and efficiency and all of that. So you have to play both games, and I would say you have to be a fighter in general, or a design advocate. That's a little bit of a weak word. I would say you have to be more than an advocate. You have to be like a gladiator in order to push a design forward.
You have to fight for it.
Advocating for it on its own is not enough. I think you have to fight for it, and you have to stand, like put your foot down, be like, okay, this is enough. So it's and not every personality is like that. So every year in North Carolina, I don't know how many architects they certify. They give a license, so probably 2,000, whatever. So take that, apply it to 50 states. 50 times 2,000, 100. That's what 100,000 architects every year. And so these architects that are designing stuff, they're all kinds of different personalities, and probably 5% of them are gladiators. The rest are just taking whatever comes. So it's I don't know how to summarize it. It's like I'm trying to put like a cap over the idea. It's just so out there that I think it comes down to the individual person and what they want to do with their life, what they want to do with their career, and if they want to have what they designed or what stayed after or their legacy, let's say, be one thing or the other. Yeah.
How do you see your business growing in the next 5-10 years? What's your biggest vision of that?
So when I started this thing, June 25th of 2021, that was the first day on my own, right? I thought I was going to be doing small, like 200 square foot porch additions for years before I got any traction.
Yes.
And I was proven wrong very quickly.
Yeah.
To the better, right? To the better. So I learned to kind of let go of expectations of what do I want to do. I have kind of a high level goal. So if getting into projects that are kind of a bigger scale, maybe multifamily scale, getting into projects that are that involve a lot more people and trying to push design or high level design at that scale is probably my next goal. What that manifests in, I have zero expectations attached to that. So it could be that I partner with a designer that has or an architecture firm that has 250 people that are ready to execute.
Yeah.
It could be that I grow the company to 60 people 70 people that I can achieve that goal. But as long as I'm on my way to get to that level where I can apply some of more of that gladiator mentality to design to bigger projects and projects that touch more people, I feel like I'll be on my way. I feel like I'll be happy progressing in that direction. And so 5-year plan. See, you helped me sign up for this program that helped you put a plan together. I'm halfway through it now, through the applications and things. And so what comes out of that, we'll see. But I don't necessarily have a laid out plan, a written one. I just have that high level kind of legacy driven mentality. And that's what's driving everything right now. So in 5 years, we might be 25 people, or we might still be 5 people partnering with much bigger companies. I don't think I sway at this point one way or the other.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's very liberating. There is always a balance, between planning too much or not planning at all. And I always find value in having a target. It doesn't really necessarily mean that you have to hit the target. It's okay. And the target can move. It's okay. But I always find helpful to have a direction. And it doesn't have to be very specific. It could be, more type of project types or, type of clients or relationships that you're gearing toward, that you move toward that side.
Yeah.
And the other thing is taking advantage of the opportunity. I think you were here. Were you here in 2008?
No, I wasn't. I came to the US December 2012, January 2013.
Yeah. So I was talking to somebody about, because I was here in 2008, how interesting is to live in the same place, same country, same economy, completely different realities.
Yeah.
In 2008, the unemployment rate in architecture was 80%.
Wow.
No projects. The few friends that I had left the city or the country, because if you were an architect, you have no way to make a living. No way. There was nothing happening. To now be to where we are, which is, just an abundance of opportunities and projects. I'm like, man, this is crazy. How different the reality is. So you're in a really good position, because right now, when you started on your own, you had a really healthy economy to really exercise and gain traction of those opportunities.
Absolutely.
And you're doing the right thing, because you're just going, pushing yourself to the bigger and better opportunities. And that's only equipping you to take advantage on something even better than what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it in this sense, when you can't really chase opportunity. It's more like a wave. You're standing at the shallow part of the beach, and a wave comes and it raises you, right? It raises you 10 feet. Or in business, let's say, good economy comes and it raises you a bunch, or it brings you different opportunities. And so it's your job now as a business owner to kind of build the infrastructure, or build the columns under you, the support under you, so that when that waves comes, you stay at the level that you are.
Right.
And then you reposition yourself, and you wait for the next wave to come. And so the first wave might come from the southeast, the next one from the northwest. So what that means is, in our world, is this wave that came might have been architectural designer type of an opportunity where there's a ton to design. The next wave might be more into real estate purchasing and reselling. So I look at architecture and the knowledge of architecture as like a tool chest. So whatever I can apply it to, I'll apply it to. I'm not strictly into design I don't necessarily aim to be.
Sure.
Right now I'm doing design, and if I'm doing design, I'm going to do design 150%. Like, I'm going to give it my all. Next wave might be sale or I'll take everything that I learned from everything and apply it to the next one. And so I think that there's a lot of what you said, like, I don't control the market. I would say a lot of it had been the happenstance of me being in a position to pull the trigger on starting an architecture firm and the market helping. But I think at the core of each person, there is there's like somebody who sees the opportunity and somebody who doesn't. And somebody who sees the opportunity will always be able to see the next one, or not always, but will hit more than miss. And someone who doesn't see the opportunity will always miss more than hit.
Right.
And so that ends up being a lot of kind of the back end of it, or at least what goes on in my mind. So like I said, it's hard. You just and what I'm finding right now is, okay, the wave is pulling you up, but the hard work is building that infrastructure so that when the wave passes, you're not going down with the wave.
Right.
So and that's something to be aware of, be very conscious of, and do your best to kind of pull resources in and build the correct infrastructure that lasts. So we'll see what happens. I'm very hard on myself before something happens. Let's say the economy crashes and some architectural firms go out of business, and I'm one of them. The hell, like after something passes and I can't really do anything about it, I'm very quick to let it go.
Yeah.
So that and I think as a business owner, you have to be a little bit like that. Like pursuing a project, you go all in, 200% on the proposal. You try to do everything you can to get the project. You get it, great. You don't get it, all right, let it go. Perfect. Next day in 5 minutes. Yeah. So you have to be a little bit like that in order to survive in this world.
Yeah. That's something I've learned throughout the years, and it's been hard because sometimes when you put so much effort, passion, and emotion in what you do, when it doesn't work, I think it's not much about
you judge yourself.
Yeah. But what that you lost it, but you say, man, what did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. Should I have done it a different way? You're 100% right. You judge yourself. So the less we judge ourselves, the better.
And I think like constructively criticizing yourself and judging yourself are two different things. Like if you sit down with yourself and be like, or in bed, in the shower, it doesn't have to be on a piece of paper. Just sit there, just have a nice cold shower and be like, all right, how did I screw this one up? Yeah, that does help you for the next one. But judging yourself, beating yourself up, going on a panic attacks, getting hard, like all of that doesn't really move your needle at all. So yeah, you just have to.
Yeah, at the same time, something that I'm working on practicing a lot more is just celebrating my own wins, being more compassionate with my own self. Saying, man, good job. You did a great job. That's amazing. You're a great human being. And sometimes we don't do that.
Yeah, I rarely do that. And so I'm extremely hard on myself. And when I get a big, let's say, project win or something that goes my way, the way I've expected it to, and it worked exactly the way I expected it to, my kind of celebration is just kind of sitting back in my chair and looking at the ceiling like, that was good, man. Right. You did good. So patting myself on the back a little bit like that. But I also don't celebrate necessarily in any way that's very visible to the outside. It's more of like an internal conversation with yourself, right? Or with myself. Yeah. It's let me ask you this. Yeah. How are you kind of trying to be more compassionate with yourself and pat yourself on the back more? Are you trying to do it in more external, visible ways, or is it more internally? I'm curious about your side.
Both ways, because one is I'm also working on being more compassionate. So sometimes if I made a mistake, I'm like, oh man, like how did I miss that? And I start having this internal conversation in my own mind where I'm kind of beating myself up. Okay. So I've been developing a lot of self-awareness where I'm realize I'm doing that and I stop myself. And I'm like, hey, stop. Dude, you made a mistake. And anybody could do that. You're doing other great things. Mm-hmm. It's okay. I forgive you. Like forgiving yourself. Yeah. And it's weird because you're not even having the conversation in your mind. It's just, it happens in a thought level. Yeah. It's just thinking.
It's a deeper level.
Yeah. And I feel it because the thought becomes emotion. Yeah. So you feel it. You feel it in your stomach. Yeah. You feel it in your body. Mm-hmm. So that's where when I realize I'm beating myself is because my body feels it. And that's the sign where I'm like, okay, I need to go back and that's not the type of person I want to be,
Yeah.
because being like that is not taking me anywhere. The other thing is, if I win up, let's say a project, and I'm like, oh man, good job. Well, and maybe that day I go have a really nice lunch at a restaurant that I really like, or if I like to drink, certain drink, a scotch or a cocktail, I buy a bottle and I have, I get home and I have a nice glass, and I'm like, man, this is good. Or I buy something for myself. Maybe I wanted a watch or something, so I'll go and buy it. Like buy myself presents.
Yeah.
And I'm working on like being better at the presents. Like I work and everything I make is for my family. I almost never buy anything for myself.
Yeah.
My wife buys everything, and sometimes she buys me clothes and I wear it. But that I'm saying, oh man, I really like this, I'm gonna buy it. No, I feel like irresponsible doing it.
Yeah.
But that's wrong, because I deserve it. Why not? And that to me, I'm working on developing a more abundant mentality.
Yeah.
Because when I'm realizing that when I'm coming from a place of limit or scarcity or lack, that's within you, and you don't open your brain and your emotions and your mind to receive even more. So it's a limitation factor.
That abundance mindset thing is so true, because like I was reading somewhere, I don't remember where, but I was reading somewhere, and something that really stuck with me. They were saying people don't know how much easier to make an extra $1,000 than to try to save $1,000 a month. It takes 100 times the effort to save $1,000 a month that it would take you to earn an extra 1,000.
Yes.
And that is to me, what you just said, that's what rung in my head, is like that abundance mindset versus the kind of lack mindset or the in abundance mindset. And so once you get in the habit of, all right, not what do I need to do to, how much do I need to save, or what do I need to cut in order to make this happen?
Right.
But how do I need to grow to get to the level where I can afford that?
Man, yeah.
That switches the whole game completely.
I know that's happening to me right now, because I had a bunch of unexpected expenses that I had to do, broken car, the HCSE, and all of a sudden I had to spend a lot of money like in 4 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God. And my immediate reaction was, I need to start saving. And I'm like, wait, no.
Hold on.
Let's just make double or triple of what I'm making, and I cover that. It's a lot easier, as you're saying, it's a lot easier. But that's when the limitation is now, oh man, but how am I gonna make double? It's gonna be harder. And that's where the abundance comes, is what you receive is not a direct relationship of the work you're doing.
Absolutely.
And I grew up in, my dad was always a good worker. I've always been very proud of being a hard worker, but that has a limit.
Yeah.
It just only takes you so much. When you're dealing about abundance and receiving and getting a lot of things in your life, that's a level of thinking and a level of emotion that you have to live in order for that reality to become part of your life.
And the hardest part about it is that you're going against everything everybody else taught you. So, like, I come from a broke family.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say broke, I'm going to say poor.
Yeah.
In Lebanon. And so everything they did there, or the family did, was save. And so 22 years later, my dad had about $100,000 worth of money in Lebanese money saved in the bank. And they switched the economy, and the currency dropped tenfold.
Wow.
And I'm fortunate to have lived through that. Someone might look, I'm getting screwed, I'm a victim. I'm like, no, I am fortunate that I've lived through that so that I don't make the same mistake for my life.
Yeah.
My dad is just took a bullet for the entire family and taught me a great lesson. So that also comes from the abundance mindset as well. It's like, okay, you might have lost something materialistic, but the lesson you learned, that's going to change your entire life forward. And so when you're trying to elevate yourself and kind of think at a level that is a little bit opposite to everything that you've been taught on a family level, mom, dad, uncle, aunt, and then you go to the news, all the banks, they make money by you saving money. So of course they're going to tell you to save money.
Yeah.
So you go there, they're like, okay, the banks are telling me to save money. My mom and dad are telling me to save money. Everybody I know is telling me to save money. How the hell am I going to start figuring out the system on the side? And once you get, that's the toughest thing mentally. As soon as you pass that, you like everything else is a little bit easier. You're okay with yourself being different. You're okay with yourself being on the kind of, what's the word for it? Like on the receiving end of comments from your family, I guess. It just becomes a part of life, and then you just do your thing.
Yeah, no, man, that's exciting. That's a conversation that is very critical in my life right now because I'm feeling, I'm very excited that all I need to do is just to become a better person, a different version of myself in the way I interact with my own thoughts first. And then once I get a handle of what kind of thoughts I need to change, that's going to change my emotional reaction to things, to reality. And that starts changing the reality that I'm associated with. Because, the world is not the way it is. We see the world through our eyes. So the world is the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of creating your reality by your reaction to the reality that you see.
But now, to the point that we were discussing, there is an extreme side to it too. So you can talk abundance mindset, right? And you're at a level, let's say, where you can afford 5 Ferraris and you buy yourself a jet. So that's stretching yourself. So you have to be reasonable and very realistic with yourself. And I think that abundance mindset coupled with you being hard on yourself is the recipe for success and is the recipe to make it happen. Because if that abundance mindset, and if you're very easy on yourself, you would just chill and not do nothing and expect to get that abundance. And so the being hard on yourself alone is not good, and the abundance mindset alone is not good. Together, they blow up like nothing else. And so another concept that comes up all the time is like that YOLO mindset. You only live once. To the point that I'm making, you can say YOLO and go snort a line of cocaine. Yeah. Or you can say YOLO and go start a business.
Right.
Those are two different things.
Yeah.
One, you're hard on yourself. One, you're super easy on yourself and you don't care.
Yeah.
So those concepts, we talk about them, but it's good to acknowledge that they can be taken too far and they can be, you just have to play the game right. You cannot really expect to YOLO it or to live an abundance mindset and not be expected to kind of struggle and build the infrastructure and do the hard work and work longer and harder than everybody else.
Balance. Everything I
yin and
think
yang.
about, I go back to balance.
Yeah.
As long as things are balanced, they're gonna be good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Alaa, thank you so much, man, for your time. This podcast has been one of my favorites. I tell you right now, we cover so many topics. I'm always very impressed by what you're doing. I'm really excited about what you're doing, and I'm really telling you right now, I want to help you as much as I can because I want to see you succeed because you have a great future in the world.
Man, Jack, I really appreciate you too. Thank you for having me. And I think we ended the conversation on a super kind of controversial high note that people will like to listen to. But I appreciate your confidence in me, and to be honest with you, me doing what I'm doing is kind of follows in the path of what you've done already. And so someone changing a culture completely and then adapting to that culture and then succeeding in that culture is something that a very small percentage of the world can handle. And kudos to you, man. I appreciate what you're doing as well. I think the future is bright for both of us.
Thanks, man. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content. And find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.